Welcome to the Financial Coaches Podcast, where we talk about how to build your practice from startup to scale up while being the kind of coach your clients crave. Finally, a podcast for financial coaches. Here are your hosts, Maria Casillas and Cody Sizemore.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Financial Coaches Podcast. I'm Maria Casillas, joined here by my incredible co-host, Cody Sizemore, but we are also joined by an even more incredible host, guest, not host. Maybe someday. I don't know, Zoe. But we have Zoe Hughes here with us today, and we are thrilled to bring her into the mix so you guys can hear from her amazing personality. You can hear the energy that she has, and she has done some really incredible things and literally just got started. So we're thrilled to have her here. But before I have you introduce yourself, Zoe, I just want to remind our listeners how appreciative we are of each of you. Thank you so much for tuning in today. And every time that you have tuned in, we have been hearing from you that you are getting such great value from all of the stuff that we're putting out there. And that is what keeps us going every single time. So thank you so much. We look forward to connecting with you in our Facebook group, which is I always mess this one up. It is the Financial Coaches Community by New Money Habits. And all you have to do is search for that. We'll let you in after answering a couple of questions. And there's some really great discussions going on in there. So we look forward to seeing you there. All right. Without further ado, Zoe, welcome to the Financial Coaches Podcast. We're thrilled to have you here. And we ask that you would just kind of share a little bit about yourself with our audience.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I feel like that was an insane intro. I feel like you've made me seem like this incredible person. And you know what? I will take the praise. I will pretend like that is me.
It is you. Just own it. So tell us a little bit about who you are and how you've kind of recently started your coaching practice and anything else that you would think would be interesting for them.
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Zoe Hughes. I'm 22. I'm 23 in 10 days, actually. Very exciting.
It is exciting.
But I'm from Boston, Massachusetts. I'm currently a senior at Washington University in St. Louis. I am a second semester senior, so there's some existential dread there for sure. Sometimes have mental breakdowns about that, but we don't need to talk about that. And after graduation, I'm moving to Chicago and I'm going to be in the management trainee program at Kraft Heinz, which I'm very, very excited about. In terms of my coaching journey, it kind of just happened to me. It was not a planned thing at all. So I became really interested in financial literacy because my friends like to say that I go through these phases of just deep interest in a very specific thing. So it was for a month there, it was crocheting and I made a bag, and then that got, the next thing was financial literacy, but that was about 4 years ago and it's just never let up. And so I was super interested in financial literacy, read every book I could on it, listened to all the podcasts, did all the things, took all the classes. And for Christmas one year, I gave my brother the gift of retirement, which really meant that I didn't want to, get him a real gift that year. But more than that, it meant that I was going to sit down with him and set up a Roth IRA and a traditional IRA and just get him started on that. And then after that, we started working together on his finances. And then his friends just started making appointments with me. I didn't even actually know that this was a thing that I could do. And so I Googled around and I was like, do I need a license for this? Is this something that I need to go to school for? And then I found this thing called being a money coach. And now I'm a money coach and I have clients and I work with very different people every day. And it's very cool and very fun that I get to take on the new phase of my passion because I feel like I really love learning about it, but teaching other people about it is just a completely different way to express that passion. And so I'm having a great time with that, but it was totally by accident. Not really sure how I got here, but super happy to be here, having a great time.
Yeah, that's great. Now, is your brother younger or older than you?
My brother's older than me.
He's older than you. Okay. That's actually really important, mostly because oftentimes you hear of, a big sister helping the little brother do something, but you kind of reverse that a little bit. So how much older is he than you?
My brother is 4 years older than me, and my sister is 2 years older than me.
Okay. So still under 30, but over 25. Okay.
30. Oh, yeah.
Okay. And so that's kind of go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say that's kind of why I feel like we work together on these things, because like we're very much all learning together. It doesn't really feel like I'm helping my adult brother with his life. Like he's in his 20s. So
sure.
This is just like a passion that I have. And my brother, happily, I'm not sure why, but he takes my advice. And so, which is awesome. And, he loves learning about it too. And so it's really awesome.
Yeah, actually, I think that adds to your credibility. And that's partly why I asked whether he was younger or older, because the fact that he is an older brother and is still taking advice from you, it says that you're really good at least at delivering the message. Even if your advice wasn't great, you're really good at being able to deliver that message. And I'm not saying your advice isn't great. But even if it wasn't, you obviously have a way to deliver something that somebody who normally would feel like that role was reversed is able to take that on from you. So I think that's really incredible. Cody, I would be remiss to not remind everybody that you're here and ask you to jump in to our conversation.
Yeah, no, I was just listening and enjoying the show. It's good stuff. But that's one thing, especially for you being 22. Because when I first started, I think I was like 26, 25, something like that. That's one thing that a lot of younger coaches struggle with is like, oh, well, who's going to take advice from a 22-year-old kind of thing, right? And it's just not the case, so the fact that like you just started doing it anyways. Now, of course, it started with your family, which is, obviously a cool way to kind of get started. But for you to not think about that and for you to just like jump straight into it and say, I don't care how old I am. I know that I can give value. I know that I'm good at communication. I know that, some of the things I might suggest is going to help someone in some way. I'm just going to do it anyways. The fact that you did that is, in my opinion, really cool. Because that is something that a lot of younger coaches or even aspiring coaches who are younger worry about, and I think that that's just a stigma that just isn't right. Even on my end, like I'm still younger. I'm 31 now. I have crossed that 30 threshold, so I'm feeling a little bit older. But I will say that I'm working with people in their 50s, their 60s, even have talked to people in their 70s as well. And the age thing really hasn't been an issue. I don't even think one time, so
okay.
I just want to acknowledge you for that, for you, not letting that hold you back in any way or, concern you or anything like that. And you're just doing what you do best.
Yeah. And I'm going to add real quick, as the obvious oldest person on this particular podcast, I will say that mind game can happen at any age. So somebody who's much older, like myself, will sometimes go, well, what is this 22-year-old going to want from me? Like, yes, there might be this idea of, well, there's wisdom and all that stuff from, life experience. But anybody who wants to hear from somebody will listen. Anybody who does not want to change will be resistant to your age, to your background, to anything. And so what I have come to realize, you guys, is that it's so much more about them than it is about us. And if we let that mental game mess with us, then it can ruin any one of us. So all of our listeners out there are varied in ages, and just know that your age really doesn't matter. It's really what you're able to bring to the table. So Zoe, you were about to say something.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say that, like, I think part of it too is that part of the value that I bring in is like, nothing that I learned can't be learned on the internet. I learned everything that I learned on the internet. I just happen to have an obsession with it. So I'll spend hours on it. But that I think makes it more accessible to people, because it's like, well, that's, I think, why my brother's happy to work with me, is because like, if I learned it on the internet, then it can't be that hard, which means that like anyone can really learn these skills, and anyone can, it's just like, if you really know like 10 things, then you're kind of set. And then the more that you learn in this world, you realize that you should ignore those things and just focus on the 10 fundamentals. So yeah, I like, nothing that I've learned, isn't out there for everyone. It's just, you got to take the time to do it. And not everyone has that time, and not everyone has the interest in it.
That's right. And that's the value you're bringing, is you're taking the time to muffle through all of that, shuffle through it all, and present them with this beautifully packaged here's this framework and here's what you need to do. And then I'm assuming that you have an ability to draw out of them what's truly important to them so that then they can decide how do they apply those 10 principles to their own lives.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So at school, I'm part of Uncle Joe's Peer Counseling and Resource Center. Shout out. But basically, what that is, it's a peer counseling training center, and you go through 100 hours of training, and we are basically therapists on campus. And so I think also that's part of what has helped me a lot in this is understanding the psychological part of things, understanding that money is emotional, money is not about the numbers really ever. And kind of having those skills to have conversations that can be really touchy and really, really personal, I think has helped me a lot in this.
Yeah. So I'll say a few things. Number one, you mentioned everything that you learned and everything that you kind of teach people is on the internet. That's true. It's the same thing for me too. But we don't, as coaches, we don't sell information because information's everywhere, you know, and like people can learn a lot just by doing a simple Google search or looking something up on TikTok or whatever it might be, you know, like you can do a lot with that. But there's a reason why people don't take that information and put it into action, right? Yep. So what we as coaches sell, quote unquote, is not information, but instead transformation. And that's where, you know, like what you just mentioned, like, you know, you being a counselor or a therapist in some ways, that's where that side of things can really be magical with this whole financial coaching thing. So you're spot on with that. And I just felt like I needed to say that really quickly. I will also say one more thing too. So, sneak peek, or not, I guess not a sneak peek, but I guess I'll just fill you guys in on our dirty laundry. We tried to record this episode 2 weeks ago, and we had some just horrible technical issues, and we had to scrap the whole thing and then re-meet today to record today. And 2 weeks ago, Zoe came to this meeting with a bunch of questions for us, and then today she goes, I actually have way less questions to ask because I was able to figure some stuff out. So I want to first say that and just kind of give you guys a heads up that this episode is going to be almost like a coaching session in some ways. You know, so Zoe's going to come to us. She's a newer coach. She has a couple clients, but she wants to, you know, scale things a little bit more. She wants to figure things out so it works better for her. So we're just going to field some questions that she has and give her some support. But I also think that it's important too. Maria, you were kind of talking before we press record about the idea of how sometimes we have all these questions and all these things that we feel are kind of standing in the way of us taking that next step or even taking the first step. But Zoe showed something in herself that she was like, well, I'm not going to allow this technical issue to hold me back. I'm still going to go after these things and figure this stuff out. So I don't know who wants to jump in here, Maria, if maybe you do, because you were kind of bringing that up, or sure. Zoe, you want to go into it, but
I'll just jump in for a second and iterate that even though we had the technical issues, Zoe asked, you guys, do you get 5 minutes that I could ask you a couple questions? And so we did give her that 5 minutes and allowed her to ask those questions. We gave her some insight. And then 2 weeks later, she came back and said, I figured stuff out. And so I just wanted to say how incredible that is. I really do believe so many times people, they want the results. They want the dream. They want the sexy, you know, here's the thing that I've seen other people do. But to get into the weeds and figure stuff out and dig and get messy, they're like, I don't know that I want it that badly. It's just easier to blame the fact that I don't know enough, or I don't know the right people, or I don't have the right skill, or you know, whatever that thing is that we get to blame. And you didn't do that. You did say, I don't know how to do all of this. I do want some help. I'm going to ask the right people for that help. And then I'm going to take it and I'm going to go and do something with it. So I'd like for you to explain, Zoe, what was the process? What kind of goes through your head when you're trying to decide whether or not to get down and dirty or just to give up on something?
Well, okay. Well, I'll first off say that again made me sound so much better than I really am. To me, that was let me ask these questions and ruin when we actually record this episode. But I'm glad that there's another way to see it that way. So thanks for saying that. But when it comes to like figuring out which questions to ask. Is that kind of what you're talking about? Like when to give up on a question and when to keep going with it?
Well, it was more like once you had, just the beginning answers, obviously in 5 or 7 minutes, we didn't give you all of the answers. We just gave you a little bit of insight. And so I'm wondering what made you decide to bridge the gap between the little bit of insight that you had and getting done what you had wanted to get done?
Well, I think the questions that I had for you guys are mostly about branding. So one unique, I guess, thing about me is that I don't have any social media. It's a personal choice. I don't have an Instagram. I don't have a TikTok. And I do that on purpose because it's really important to me to not be addicted to my phone. And I know that I would be. Like I'm addicted to YouTube shorts. Like that's not a normal, that's dumb and a weird place to be. And so and that's just because it's automatically there. So, I try and stay away from social media as much as I can. But with that comes a barrier to being a coach, because a lot of coaches say that a really great way to get clients is to make content. And a really great way to have clients find you is to just send them to your Instagram page or to your TikTok or whatever. So my question for you guys was about what do I do in terms of should I make a website? What should I do in my special case? What link should I give people basically? And the answer that you guys gave was, just do a website, but it's not really that big of a deal. You guys usually just send people to your landing page for your scheduler. And so to me, for that question, it just kind of gave me permission to stop thinking about it a little bit. I just put my website up there. I made it on Google Sheets. It's up there. It looks fine. It does the job. And I stopped thinking about it a little bit. And I think some of the questions that I have sometimes are overwhelming in the sense of what should my brand be? Who do I want to represent myself as? How will I represent myself to other people and actually make that happen? And I think that it's been helpful to kind of give up on those questions a little bit and just be okay, what is going to happen will happen. I'm working with these clients. I will figure out my brand as I go. But in the meantime, those big questions are just kind of getting in the way of me actually doing the work. And so to bridge the gap, as you said, I just kind of gave up on it. Maybe
just what all of our listeners were hoping to hear. Just give up. What it really sounds like is you gave up on the need to know the end before actually starting at the beginning. That's all that you gave up on. You didn't give up on, what you're actually wanting. You had this desire to say, what do I look like? What does my brand look like? What is it all going to look like in the end? And when I know that, I'll start. And you said, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm just going to start. And we'll figure out what it looks like in the end. And you know what? 3 years from now, you might look back at yesterday and go, oh my gosh, I can't believe that I started with that particular thing because now I'm so far over here. But at least you started. Whereas if you don't, then 3 years from now, you're going to look back and go, when am I going to start this thing that I've been wanting to start for the last 3.5 years?
Right. Yeah. I guess the maybe giving up wasn't the right word. It was more giving myself permission to figure it out along the way.
Absolutely. That is a really, really good way to reframe that.
Yeah. Cool. So you figure some stuff out, which is great. But you also have some questions too. So let's dive into some of that. And I'll just let you kind of steer the ship here. You're the captain and we'll be the best crew in the world. But hit us with some questions, things that you feel like you're still kind of trying to figure out, need a little bit of support with, whatever it might be.
Sure, yeah. So, full disclosure, I'm a senior in college. I'm not taking that many classes. I'm just finishing out my credits and I'm taking drum lessons. I'm taking a conspiracy theory class, which are awesome, but they mean that I have a lot of free time. And so I'm spending a lot of my free time on coaching. But I guess my question is about when I begin my corporate job. I'm not going to have the free time that I have now. I spend a lot of my mental energy outside of classes thinking about this. And I kind of talked a little bit before about how this was never really my plan. And so I don't necessarily want to give up on my life in Chicago. I'm super, super excited about that. And I want to put a lot of energy in that as well. And so I kind of want to sustain this money coaching job as a side hustle. And so my question to you guys would be, how do I balance that? Like, knowing that right now it takes a lot of my energy, willingly that I give it. And I'm super excited about that because, I don't have a ton of demands in school right now, but eventually I will. How do I do that in terms of energy, and how do I balance that in terms of time management, I guess would be my questions.
So I'm going to make it a really simple answer, and then I'm going to kind of expand on it from there. I think that, simply put, the way that you find that balance between your corporate job and, the coaching that you want to do as like a side hustle is literally just listen to your heart. And that's it. So what I mean by that is, you might find that with your corporate job, you might get your fix of, being able to help people, and, getting the type of reward from that, mentally, emotionally, all that kinds of stuff. You might find that it only takes one person per month, one client, that you're working with at a time. And if that's the case, then great, like, just run with that. However, on the other side of things, you may even find, and this kind of goes into the statement of like, this really wasn't according to my plan, right? You may find that, like, as you start the corporate job and as you start working with more people, that you actually really enjoy this more than your corporate job, than you initially thought. And if that's the case, you should also just listen to your heart and, scale it at the rate that you want it to be. Maybe it's 10 clients, maybe it's 20 clients, maybe it's 30 clients, whatever it might be. So I think that finding that balance, balance doesn't really exist, in my opinion. Like, it's a cool concept to think about, but it's different from person to person. There is no like balance formula or anything like that. It really depends on where your heart is and what that's kind of speaking to you. And as long as you're aligned with that, then that's the balance, So that's the one thing that I just want to like say kind of simply. And before I even expand on that, I'm actually kind of curious as to what's kind of going through your head when I say that, Zoe.
Yeah, I guess, the applicable way to kind of apply what you're saying is just kind of see what happens. And just, not think about it right now, because like, I think that's also like something that I tend to do, is thinking about the future a lot and try and plan all scenarios so that I can be super prepared whatever happens. But you're right. Like, I really have no idea what can happen. And it's totally possible that I go to this job, which I know I will love, and feel that this is not where I want to be in money coaching. Or it's possible that like I will want to dedicate a lot of my free time to this.
Yep.
And I just kind of don't know. And so what I kind of took from what you said is just like, don't have a ton of expectations going in, and just kind of see what happens and go from there.
It's kind of the same line of thinking of like some of the stuff that you figured out from the last time that we spoke, to where it was like, well, just do it, and see what happens, kind of thing. It's the same line of thinking, because like, you're right. Like, you might do it and you might find, I actually don't even know if I want to do this. And if that's the case, then don't do it, and that's one extreme. And then the other extreme would be like, I think I want to do this full time, kind of thing, right? Like, our plans are funny. Plans are funny because we think that we know what's the best for us. We think that we have this grand master plan of how we're going to like, run our lives and how it's all going to turn out. But the one thing that I've learned in my long 31 years of life is that plans change, and that was even the same thing for me on my end. Like, I started my coaching practice as a side hustle, and, I didn't really plan to go full time. I had thought that it might be kind of cool to do that, but it wasn't like a grand master plan to do that. And then even as I did go full time, which I've talked about this story in the past in this show, and I won't go into it too much, but I will say that I was thrusted into it a little bit more prematurely than I had initially thought. And it was at that point where I was like, okay, I'm either going to do this or not, and then I just decided I'm going to do it. And I took it to that next level, and, here I am today doing it full time and having, a decent amount of success with it too. So plans are cool to think about. Plans make us feel a little bit more in control of the current circumstance. But plans do change. Plans do change. And that's why I say, like, just do it and feel it out. Like, mentally, what's the load? Emotionally, what's the load? Physically, even, what's the load, right? And what part of your life or a part of your plan gives you the most value? You know, it lights you on fire the most. You're the most passionate about it. And whatever route that is, that's what you should be leaning into, in the amount that, like, you know, you lean into it enough to where it's still enjoyable. You still love it. You're still getting value from it. And it's not becoming this chore or this job or this thing that you feel like you have to do anymore. And that level of things, it's different from person to person. Maybe it's a part-time thing, and that's fine. Maybe it's a full-time thing. That's fine. Maybe it's a no-time thing. That's fine. But that's what I mean by just, like, listen to your heart.
It's a great answer. Really good insight. Thank you.
Maria?
Well, I mean, I don't know if my insights are going to even make any sense anymore after that answer. But one of the things that I immediately thought about was you mentioned the word side gig, and I'm a bit of a word snob sometimes. Not that I have good words, but just that I know that words have meaning. And so I would encourage you to identify, what does that even mean for you? And it sounds more logical than emotional, the way that Cody put it. But what does that mean? And I think sometimes when we say things like side gig, we have this perceived notion of what that really looks like, and it can guide us in the wrong direction. So it's very much what Cody was talking about, where it's like following your heart and stuff. But also recognizing that a side gig might just mean if you don't need that income, maybe it looks a little bit different. You know, Cody and I are very different, and all of our listeners know that he needs this. This is his full-time job. And for me, this really is a side gig. And yet my side gig is going to look different than the next person's side gig because of what my needs are, what my desire is, how much time I have to put into it. And so that is part of the answer that I would have had for you. And then the other part is when you, no matter how much of a side gig this is, I would treat it like a business. I would definitely do that, whether it's, you know, little time or all time, or, I mean, you can't really treat it like a business if it's no time. But when it comes to setting up your financial books and stuff, I would make sure that you're building in profit, that you're putting aside money for taxes, just all of those things that it makes you, it like legitimizes it for you so that you are prepared if you want to go even farther later on and nothing comes back to haunt you if you decide to stop doing it altogether. So that's the one thing I would add to what he said.
Awesome. Great advice. Yeah, I honestly need to look into making an LLC and stuff. That is my next step. My first step was going to be just see if I can get clients, and I have surpass that. And so I think at this point, you know, that is something that I definitely need to start thinking about.
And they're paying clients, right? You've got people who are paying you for this. Okay. So, I know you said my next step needs to be an LLC. I don't even think that that's true. You don't need to have an LLC to actually start setting up your business in a way that that financially reflects a business. So yes, that will legitimize things for you. It will protect you. I think that it's actually really good, especially given the personal and I don't know, litigious maybe nature of what we're doing. You might want to make sure that you separate your business from your personal stuff so that in the hopefully unlikely event that you get sued for something, they can come after your business, but they can't come after Zoe Hughes, right? Mm-hmm. So that would be one of the biggest reasons for doing that. But you don't have to do that first in order to start, I don't know, like setting your money aside in a way that makes sense and that you are using it for, you know, specifically for operating expenses, and you're not dipping into your personal stuff to do that. You can let your business fund your business even before you have an LLC.
Great. That actually makes me think of a question that I've been wondering a bit about, which is like setting aside money for taxes from the income that I make from this side business. Mm-hmm. How would I go about that? So if you say like it's not really about an LLC, then what is it about in the financial sense? Putting money aside. I assume part of that is making sure to put money aside so I can reinvest back into the business, things like that. Yeah,
that's some of it. I would first off say whether you have an LLC or not, do not commingle your money. Like that is first and foremost. You want to make sure that no coaching money goes into your personal account. No personal stuff goes into your coaching account. So if you do not yet have a separate bank account for your business, open a separate bank account. Like that would be the first thing. So you're nodding. Do you have one already separately?
I don't.
You don't. Okay. So that's one thing I would absolutely do, because that is one of the easiest ways to keep track of what you actually have coming in. That's coaching, and what you don't. And so, I would say that. Now, some people think, well, I have to have a business account. And in order to have a business account, I have to have an EIN. In order to have an EIN, I have to have an LLC. And that's where it all starts with the, oh my gosh, I have to. Right now, even if it's just a separate personal checking account that you use only for your business, that's a good place to start. And then when you get your LLC and an EIN, you can open a free business account at that point and then transfer everything over. But for right now, Zoe, you want to make sure that there is no commingling going on.
Okay. What's the purpose of that besides just keeping track of your money?
Well, if there is any sort of IRS audit or something down the future, then they can come back and say that you actually weren't doing business stuff, that this was part of your personal thing. And commingling is one of the first things that they actually start looking for.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's really good to know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Would like a sub account in your personal checking count, or just like a full new account?
I would do a full on new account. Yep. And you could even do a different bank, if you want to kind of keep it separate that way. And you just want to make sure that it's relatively inexpensive or preferably free. There are lots of banks this is what keeps a lot of startups from creating checking accounts, is that oftentimes business accounts will have, minimum balances that you have to keep on a daily basis, or, they charge all these fees for this different stuff. You can find it. Sometimes it takes a little bit of searching, but you can find bank accounts that will not charge you. Like the one that I use, it's free as long as I don't go into the branch. So that sounds weird. You're like, well, what do you mean as long as you don't go into the branch? But I never go into the branch anyway. So that was a fine thing for me. I can mobile deposit anything I want. They have, ATMs all around that I can grab money from. And so I don't have to physically go into the branch for anything. And so it has remained free when I have tens of thousands of dollars, and when I have tens of dollars in the account, it doesn't matter. And so I needed something that was like that because of the ebbs and flows of my personal side gig. So you can find something. Yeah.
Sorry, just to clarify, this is a business account that you have for free.
I have one for free. Yeah, that's correct. Okay. I do have a business account.
So
that's correct.
You should you should open specifically a business account.
If you have the capacity to do that. Usually with business accounts, you need the EIN. And in order to get that, which is basically a social security number for your business, right? Okay. So in order to get that, you need to have the LLC and all of that. So what I'm trying to do is allow you to recognize that you don't need, like there are two ways you can go. One of them is a more sophisticated way, but it also takes a little bit longer. And I don't want that way to keep you from doing what you need to do. So if you need to start with a personal account, that's okay. Just keep all of your personal money out of it.
Okay. That's really good to know. Thank you. I honestly wasn't even thinking about that at all. So
sure.
Yeah. And I would recommend opening a couple of them as well. So for example, I don't know if you're familiar with like the Profit First
I'm not.
approach. No? Okay. So that's your next homework, is to go order the book Profit First. It basically talks about how to structure your business finances so that it can be something that is very smooth, and that it operates on a like cash flowing machine versus a cash eating machine. And in the book, it talks about different bank accounts that you should open for different purposes. Now, in the book, I think he talks about 6 of them.
Yeah, 6 or 7.
Yeah, Maria and I have found that you don't really need all 6, that if you have just a couple of them, that's going to be beneficial. So, for example, like I would have one that maybe is like an operating account. So that's where like all of the income comes in from the business, and then all of the expenses go out. So something like a scheduler subscription or something like that. It's like an operating account, right? And then you'll have a tax account that's specifically for taking a percentage of your income that you've made and setting it aside for taxes. You'll have another account that's the profit account, this is what we're talking about when we say profit. It's from that Profit First, which basically is a way for you to grow your business so that the business pays for the investments that you're going to make. So if you were to invest into like a program to become a better coach or to learn marketing or whatever it might be, you can have the business income actually do that for you, so that you don't need to invest your own personal income instead. And it has a couple other functions too. And then maybe even like a peace of mind or sleep well at night fund for the business as well. That way, like, if you feel like you need a little bit of extra money, or if something comes up that's unexpected, you have that there. And for the same purpose, you don't need to dip into your personal savings as well. So I think that if you have those four: operating, taxes, profit, and sleep well at night fund for the business, that would be a good structure.
Yeah, this is super interesting information. Do you think that this is worth doing even if you don't have that many clients? Like, say one day in the future,
Yes.
when I have my job, I just sustain one client.
Yes.
You think it's still worth it to have these like separate bank accounts for that one?
I do. And here's why. Number one, it's going to help you organize things better.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, it's going to keep the business and personal separate, which is what Maria's whole point is and what she was talking about. But also number three is that it's good to put things into practice that are going to serve you in the beginning, so that when things do pick up, it's natural and you don't need to do all of this like backtracking work, and it's not something that you're implementing that's new when you have 10 clients or whatever it might be, and it might feel a little bit overwhelming. It's just like going to the gym. Like, you might not hit every single machine in the first day that you go. You might just start on the treadmill. But like, the point is that you're going to the gym kind of thing, right? And the next day you go back to the gym. The next day you go back to the gym. And every now and then, as you start getting more fit and you start introducing new things, then it becomes more to deal with. But the purpose is like, well, I'm just going to the gym, right? And it's the same kind of line of thinking there.
Interesting. It's good to know. I'm super glad that you guys brought this up. I honestly didn't have insight into any of this.
Yeah, I would say a little bit of a nuanced response to that. I do think that it is, I was nodding my head when you said, is it still important to do this with the one client? And my head nod was the process. Yes, it's absolutely important. It's actually set up in a way where it's based on percentages, Zoe. So whether you have, $10 coming in or you have $10,000 coming in, if you're putting, 5% for profit and 30% for OpEx, it very easily lends itself to no matter the size of your income, right? So that part, yes. And for all the reasons that Cody just mentioned, you're building that muscle. I don't necessarily think it's important to do all of the different accounts that we just talked about if you have just one or two clients. But we can, if you want to hang out afterwards or talk to me on a separate thing, we can talk about ways that I have different spreadsheets and stuff that keep me organized, because the organization part is beautiful. That's wonderful. But I think it would be kind of tedious to manage that many accounts for the purpose of transferring, $10 here and there. So it depends on what you want. But that's my 2 cents on there.
Okay, very cool. Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Going back to the previous topic that we were talking about with like the balance thing, there is one more thing I wanted to just say. And then after I say this, we can answer more questions that you might have, or we can wrap it up. I don't really know if you have any more after this, but the answer I gave you was not super tactical and tangible. So I do want to at least throw a little bit into that. When you get your corporate job, do you happen to have any sort of idea as far as like what your hours might be for that job?
Yeah, I'm working 8 to 5 Monday through Friday, and Mondays and Fridays are remote.
Okay. All right, cool. So what I would do is I would at least set some sort of boundaries for yourself. So if you're kind of like the type of person towards like, I'm willing to do coaching work after I'm off on my corporate job, but I'm only willing to do 2 hours, right? Then maybe you just have like a window of like, well, from 5:30 to 7:30, that's when I'm available to hop on a phone call with someone. If you want to do more, like 3 hours or 4 hours, that's up to you. But I think that it is important to set those boundaries and then stick with it. And with that, you may not be able to work with everyone who shows an interest in you because it doesn't work with your schedule. And you have to be okay with that, you know? So my big thing there is like set that boundary so that you aren't running yourself into the ground and that you have a good relationship with the time that you're investing into that. If you want to do Saturdays or Sundays, same kind of thing. You know, like if you say, hey, I definitely don't want to do my weekends, then don't do your weekends. But if you're like me and you're like, well, I definitely don't want to do Sundays because that's the holy day and that's the family day, but I'm okay with doing Saturdays. I could take calls from like 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. That doesn't mean that I'm going to be booked 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. It just means I'm available if someone wants to book. Then you can do that too. And that's something that I've done on my end, you know? So I think that setting those boundaries and sticking with it is really important. And then from there, you can then pay attention to your heart and your body and be like, can I do more? Do I want to do more? Or is this too much? And should I do less? Kind of thing.
Totally. That's really good advice.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, it is. And when he says stick with it, doesn't mean that it's rigid and you can't be flexible with it.
Mm-hmm.
It just means you stick with what you need to do when your clients are asking you, what are your available times? So, you know, as that changes for you, feel free to change that. And then, yeah, but stick with the maintaining of the boundary.
Amazing.
Anything else, Zoe?
I don't have any questions top of mind right now, but I do want to say you guys are brilliant. You guys have really great advice, and I really, really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me and answer my questions. I know that I'm kind of new at this and in a weird position because like my schedule is going to change very drastically very soon. And I appreciate you guys taking the time to like, you know, listen and give advice that will be super applicable. So thank you guys for that.
Yeah. Oh, it's exciting. Yeah. And you could be my daughter. So it's really encouraging to see young kids who are, and you're not that young, but I don't mean that in a disparaging way, but to see young kids, this new generation come up and be not just interested in this as, you know, something to help themselves, but as something to go and help their fellow peers with. And it's really, really cool. So I'm glad to see you doing that.
Thanks. It's really awesome and fun, and I feel really good helping my family and friends and my clients. Like, it's a passion that I didn't know I had, and I'm super lucky that I get to be able to act on that.
Yeah, and you will learn. You'll continue to learn. Like we never know it all, right? There's always things changing. There are things to continue to learn, and so I do encourage you to continue learning along with your clients, with your family, as you're helping them through some stuff. You know, really start to learn vicariously. That's one of my favorite, most efficient ways to learn. And you're in psychology, so you understand what that means, just right? Just learning through the events of other people's lives. And you're going to be so much more knowledgeable if you're able to take that on and just like, you're going to be able to avoid so many pitfalls that other people got to go through and you got to watch and go, oh yeah, I don't want to do that. So I'm going to learn from their mistakes. And it's just a really efficient way to learn. So I encourage you to continue doing that as you go through your career.
Mm-hmm.
That's the plan, and we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens.
Way to bring that right to the beginning.
Awesome. Hey, Zoe, where can people connect with you if they're interested? I don't know if you got the website up completely yet or not, but
I have a newly minted website, zoehughes.com. That is my landing page, not my Instagram. So it's not that problem. But yeah, you can find me at zoehughes.com. That's ZOEHUGHES.com. Book an appointment or just kind of reach out. I like making new friends. So
love it.
Yeah. Well, and Zoe's actually, I don't know if we're allowed to say this yet. I think we are, but Zoe's actually one of the coaches that we have on our Patreon as well. And so anybody who is looking into that, if you'd like to find her there, you can do that as well. I don't know all the information, so I probably shouldn't have even said that. But as that starts to unroll, please do know that you can find her there. And she's got some really great videos there.
Yeah.
Pretty exciting. I'm excited about it. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, Zoe, thank you so much for, hopping in here, asking questions, having a really good conversation. We we had fun with you today. I don't know if you had fun. Hopefully you did.
Of course I did. How can you not?
Yeah, so
how can you not when you're talking about money coaching?
That's right. That's right.
You guys want to talk about it. My friends are like, stop. We don't want to hear it anymore.
That's funny. We should just call this the nerd podcast, really.
Yeah.
That's really what it should be. So, but no, thank you so much for your time. It was a really, really good episode, I feel, and I think that a lot of people will get a lot of value from just listening to your questions, because I know that there's a lot of people who are probably in the same place, have the same questions, and you may not even realize how much value you actually brought to those people today. So thank you again for that. And with all that being said, we want to say thank you to you guys for listening to this episode of the Financial Coaches Podcast today as well. And we hope to catch you on next week's episode too. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Financial Coaches Podcast, brought to you by New Money Habits and Sizemore Financial Coaching. Submit your questions to our hosts by emailing podcast@newmoneyhabits.com. Be sure to subscribe to be notified of future episodes and join our growing group of like-minded coaches on Facebook. And until next time, happy coaching.